Hello, welcome to Syntech channel. If you haven't subscribed the channel, please click on subscribe button. If you want to get more updates regarding the Syntech, please click on the bell icon so that you can never miss any notification from Syntech.
Continuing where the previous tutorial left off, we'll discuss one of the foundational algorithms of machine learning in this lesson, linear regression. We'll create a model that predicts crop yields for apples and oranges, and these are called the target variables, by looking at the average temperature, rainfall, and humidity in a region. So these are called the input variables: temperature, rainfall, humidity, and the things that we're trying to predict, the yield for apples and oranges, are called the target variables. And here is the training data that we are working with. This might be data collected over the past year from a different bunch of regions, showing the average temperature, rainfall, humidity, and the corresponding yields of apples and oranges. In linear regression models, each target variable is estimated to be a weighted sum of the input variables offset by some constant known as a bias. What this means is the yield of apples is assumed to be some number W11 times the temperature plus some number W12 times the rainfall plus some number W13 times the humidity plus a small term B1, which is known as bias, and similarly for oranges. Visually, it means that the yield of apples is a linear or planar function of temperature, rainfall, and humidity. Now, since we can only show three dimensions here, I'm only showing temperature and rainfall. And as you can see, the relation that we see is that as the temperature increases or as the rainfall increases, overall the yield of apples also increases. Now the learning part of linear regression is to figure out the set of weights W11, W12, W13, so on, and B1 and B2 by looking at the training data so that we can make accurate predictions for new data. That is, to predict the yields of apples and oranges in a new region or in the next year using the average temperature, rainfall, and humidity values. And this is done by adjusting the weights slightly many times to make better predictions using an optimization technique called gradient descent. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense yet, because we'll get into that in a lot of detail. Now, as with the previous post, if you want to follow along and run the code as you read, you can clone this notebook, install the required dependencies, and start Jupyter by running these commands. So I already have the Jovian library installed, so I don't need to run this. I definitely need to run the clone command. So what I'll do is I will go up here and click on the clone button, which copies the command to my clipboard. Then I need to go to my terminal. So looks like I'm still in the previous tutorial directory, so I will just come out of that directory, and I also need to deactivate this Python virtual environment that I'm currently inside. So I will simply run conda deactivate, and on older versions of Anaconda you might have to run source deactivate to deactivate the environment. Okay, now I'm going to paste the clone command. So once again, I'm just going to copy the command here, come back to my terminal, paste the command, and this downloads the notebook and the environment used, which contains all the Python libraries, right? So now I'm inside the directory 02 linear regression. It has the notebook and the environment. I'm going to run conda env update. What this does is this installs all the required dependencies from the environment.yml file and creates a virtual environment. Okay, so now that is done. Now I can activate this environment by running conda activate 02 linear regression. Next, I start the Jupyter notebook by running the Jupyter notebook command. And once I do that, I can open the notebook up within Jupyter and start executing. Once again, just to make sure that I can generate these outputs myself, I'm going to click on kernel, restart and clear output, as I'm going to run the cells one by one. Okay, and we begin by importing NumPy and PyTorch. Now the training data, which is this table here, can be represented using two matrices, inputs and targets, each with one row per observation and one column per variable. What that means is the inputs array contains three columns. It's a matrix and it contains three columns, one for temperature, rainfall and humidity, and then each of the data points from the training data becomes one row, right? So as you see here, this row shows up here, right? And similarly, the corresponding target values are also represented as a matrix with one column for the yield of apples and one column for the yield of oranges, right? And we've separated the input and target variables because we'll operate on them separately. Also, we've created NumPy arrays because typically this is how you would work with the training data. You might maybe read some CSV files or Excel files or a database dump as NumPy array, do some pre-processing, do some exploratory analysis, and then convert them into PyTorch tensors as follows. Right, so let me quickly run these. Okay, so now once I call torch.from NumPy on the inputs and targets, I get back the PyTorch tensors. Now the weights and biases can also be represented as matrices initialized as random values, right? So the first row of the weights matrix W and the first element of B are used to predict the first target variable, that is the yield of apples, and similarly the second of orange for oranges, right? So this is the weights matrix. It has two rows. This row corresponds to W11, W12 and W13, and similarly the second row for this. And similarly the bias is a vector which has two values, this for apples and this one for oranges, right? And we have used torch.randn here, which creates a tensor with the given shape with the elements picked randomly from a normal distribution with the mean 0 and standard deviation 1. Don't worry if you don't understand what that means. You can learn more about it here. But for all practical purposes, what this means is it gives us a bunch of random numbers which are close to in the range of 0 to 1 or 0 to -1. Okay. Now our model is simply a function that performs a matrix multiplication of the inputs and the weights, and the weights are transposed so that the dimensions line up. And it also adds the bias which is replicated for each observation, right? So as you can see here, here I have the inputs matrix, here I have the weights matrix, it's transposed. So once you multiply that, this row gets multiplied with this column. So I get 73 times W11, 67 times W12 and 43 times W13 plus B1. That becomes the first column of the output, and similarly the same numbers multiplied with this column, that becomes the second column of the output, right? So let's see that in action. And we can define the model very simply as a function. So it takes some input and it returns X, and here I'm using the @ character for matrix multiplication multiplied, so X multiplied by W transpose plus B. Okay. And the matrix obtained by passing the input data into the model is a set of predictions for the target variables. So let us try and generate the predictions. So I pass the model, I pass the inputs into the model, which performs this calculation, and then I print out the output, right? So this is the output that I get. For each input observation, I get two outputs. And the first one is supposed to represent the predicted yield of apples, and the second represents the predicted yield of oranges. So let us compare the predictions of our model with the actual target variables, right? So as you can see, there is a huge difference between the predictions of our model and the actual values of the target variables. In fact, in this case, a lot of these don't even make sense. For instance, the yield of oranges cannot even be negative, right? But obviously this is because we've initialized our model with random weights and biases, and we can't expect it to just work, right? And so before we improve our model, we need a way to evaluate how well our model is performing. We can compare the model's predictions with the actual targets using the following method. First, we calculate the difference between the two matrices, predictions and targets. Then we square the elements of the difference matrix to remove any negative values. And finally, we calculate the average of all the elements in the resulting matrix, right? So this results in a single number, which is known as the mean squared error, or MSE. So let's define that as a function first. And this is always a good idea to always define functions for any operations that you're performing so that you can repeat them with different inputs very easily. right? So MSE takes two arguments, T1 and T2. First, it calculates the difference between the arguments. Then it performs a diff star diff, and then the star here performs an element wise multiplication. So this is not a matrix multiplication, but it simply multiplies the corresponding elements together, and which essentially in this case squares each element of the difference matrix. Then calling torch.sum adds up all those squared elements, and finally calling diff.numel returns the number of elements in the diff matrix. So this gives us the average of all the elements in the resulting squared summed matrix, right? So let us compute the mean squared error for the current predictions of our model, right? So we print this out, and this looks like it's a pretty large number, and this is how we can interpret the results. Now, on average, each element in the prediction differs from the actual target by the square root of 15224. So that's about 123, right? So our each element in our target is off by about 123, which is quite bad because the numbers that we're predicting are themselves in just the range of maybe 50 to 100 or 50 to 120 or so on, right? And also this result is called a loss because it indicates how bad the model is at predicting the target variable. So lower the loss, the better the model, right? And with PyTorch, as we've seen before, we can automatically compute the gradient or the derivative of the loss with respect to the weights and biases because they have requires grad set to true, right? So if we go back here all this way, you can see that we have set requires grad to true for the weights and the biases. And so let us see how we can compute these gradients. So when I call loss dot backward, the gradients are computed and stored in the dot grad property of the respective tensors. Now note that the derivative of the loss with respect to the weight matrix is itself a matrix, and it has the same dimensions as the weights matrix, right? So once I let me just print this out. So as you can see here, you have this is the weights matrix and this is the corresponding gradient matrix, right? So loss is a number, but W is a matrix. So what this particular number represents, this particular element of the gradient represents the derivative of the loss with respect to this corresponding element of the weight matrix. And similarly, the second element represents the gradient with respect to this element, and so on, right? Now, since the loss is a quadratic function of our weights and biases, and our objective is to find the set of weights where the loss is the lowest, if we plot a graph of the loss with respect to any individual weight, for instance, with respect to this particular element of the weight, keeping all the other elements constant, it will look like this kind of a figure. Okay, and a key insight from calculus is that the gradient indicates the rate of change of loss or the slope of the loss function with respect to the weights and the biases, right? So if we if this is how the loss changes as a particular element of the weight is modified as increased or decreased, keeping other things constant, then the gradient which is this element represents the slope of this line. If the gradient is positive, which means the slope is increasing. If the gradient is negative, it means the slope is decreasing, right? So if the gradient element is positive, increasing that particular weight slightly will increase the loss, as it happens in this case, and decreasing the element's value slightly will decrease the loss. Okay. Similarly, if a gradient element is negative, then increasing the element's value slightly will decrease the loss because the slope is in a decreasing direction, and decreasing the element's value slightly will increase the loss, right? So and also the increase or decrease in loss by changing a weight element is proportional to the value of the gradient of that loss with respect to that element, right? So if the gradient is larger, then the increase or decrease is larger, but if the gradient is smaller, then the increase or decrease is smaller. And this forms the basis for the optimization algorithm that we'll use to improve our model. It is called gradient descent. But before we proceed, we have one final step to take care of. So that is to reset the gradients back to zero by calling the dot zero method, right? So we need to do this because PyTorch accumulates gradients. That is, the next time we call dot backward on the loss, the new gradient values will get added to the existing gradient values, right? So w.grad will first get the first set of gradient values, and then if we recompute the loss and call loss.backward once again, w.grad will retain those original value of the gradient, but it will also add on the values of the new gradients, and this can lead to problems sometimes because we want fresh gradients each time. So by calling w.grad.0 underscore, we set these gradients back to 0. Okay. So now we're ready to actually improve our model by adjusting the weights and biases using the gradient descent optimization algorithm. And this will help us reduce the loss. Now this algorithm has the following steps. The step 1 is to generate the predictions. So let's just run that. We are passing the inputs into the model and getting the predictions. Then step 2 is to calculate the loss, right? And the predictions and the loss are both the same as before since we haven't made any changes to our model. Okay. Then step 3 is to compute the gradients with respect to the weights and the biases. So let us call loss.backward. This will compute the gradients. And finally, the step 4 is to adjust the gradients by subtracting a small quantity proportional to the gradient, right? So adjust the weights and the biases, actually, not the gradients, right? And this is the insight that we learned here, that if a particular that if we move in the direction opposite to the gradient, that is, if the gradient is positive, we decrease that particular element and that will decrease the loss, and if the gradient is negative, we increase that element and that will decrease the loss, right? So by subtracting a small quantity proportional to the gradient, we can reduce the loss, right? And this will modify the weights slightly. Now why are we doing a small quantity proportional to the gradient? Because if you notice here, the gradients can often have very large values, right? And we don't want these large values to completely throw off our weights. We want to take a small step in this direction, but we don't want to suddenly jump to this point, okay? Because that is bad. That's going to increase the loss. So that's what we're doing here. First, we call torch.nograd. So torch.nograd indicates to PyTorch that we shouldn't track, calculate, or modify gradients while updating the weights and biases, since we are already done with the gradient computation and we want to use them to change the weights themselves. Okay. Then inside we call w minus equals w.grad multiplied by 10 to the power minus 5. Okay. So this subtracts a small quantity proportional to the gradient from each element of the weight. Similarly, it subtracts a small quantity proportional to the bias from each element of the bias. Okay, and finally we call w.grad.0 and b.grad.0 to reset the gradients back to 0. Okay, so now once we run this, we have slightly changed the weights and biases, right? And we have done this by taking a small step in the downhill direction of the gradient. Okay, and the small number that we have used to restrict how large a step we are taking is called the learning rate of the algorithm. Now after we have updated the weights, we reset the gradients back to 0, and this is to avoid affecting any future computations. Okay, so now let's look at the new weights and biases. As you can see here, the weight has been changed slightly. If you look at this particular element, currently it is minus 0.7791, and earlier it had the value minus 0.8332, right? And you can see a similar change for all of these values. With the new weights and biases, the model should now have a lower loss. Okay, so now the model's loss is this, which is about 10,501, and in the previous case the model's loss was about 15,000. So we have already achieved a significant reduction in the loss simply by adjusting the weights and biases slightly using the gradient descent algorithm. Now to reduce the loss further, we can repeat the process of adjusting the weights and biases using the gradients multiple times. Each iteration is called an epoch. So let's train the model for 100 epochs. So again, for I in the range 100, we first calculate the predictions, then we generate the loss, Then we calculate the gradients by calling loss.backward. Then without affecting the gradients, by setting torch.nograd, we subtract a small quantity proportional to the gradients from the weights and the bias, and finally we set the weights and bias gradients back to 0. Okay, now once again let's verify that this loss is now lower. That's great. So our loss has come down by from 10,501 to about 337. Right now, as you can see, the loss is now much lower than what we started out with. And let's look at the model's prediction and compare them with the targets. So these are the predictions of the model and these are the targets. Clearly our model is now doing a really good job. The predictions are now quite close to the target variables and we can get even better results by training for a few more epochs.